What's up, everyone? My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of Paydirt and today we're going to be doing a walkthrough of the new NFL models. Granted, they're not all brand new. A lot of them got facelifts, a lot of them got speed optimizations, a lot of them have gotten a lot of things that I introduced in MLB, right? Because a lot of my general process is I have a sport or I have an idea, and then I take that idea and I build it out for the sport during the season. And then I'm like, all right, well, this is cool. I'm going to add it into the next sport. So you'll notice some things that I have brought over from MLB if you've been an MLB subscriber over at Paydirt for the season. You'll also notice a couple things that I have added very recently that I haven't gotten to talk about yet. But yeah, we're going to be going through all of the offerings for NFL that we can expect for Paydirt this season. I am not going to be going over the portfolio manager or the contest analyzer. You'll be able to find both of those in the experimental dropdown here. I'm not going to be going over those today. I'll have some more dedicated videos on both of those. I've done plenty of videos on those already. If you go over and check out the YouTube, you'll be able to find plenty of videos on both of those. But I am working through tutorials for the portfolio manager as well, some more dedicated stuff because people ask plenty of questions about that. So, but today we're going to be going over all the NFL stuff. So, first off, the main thing that has happened here are optimizations. So, one of the main things that I have pushed for this year is making sure that availability is always there, that consistency is always there, and that downtime is non-existent, right? So in the past, I have had issues with, quota limits and different database management stuff that I just was not very good at and that I have gotten a lot better at. And that's a big boost for the productivity and the efficiency over at Paydirt. So the main things that I'll talk about today are going to be how the systems work. I'm going to also be talking a little bit about how each thing interacts with other things, right? And we'll do a small walkthrough of how each one of the tools works. So let's go ahead and start with the bread and butter, right? The range of outcomes. This is the baseline model that you should use every single day or every single slate. This is going to be where you start your research. It's going to be where you find projections. It's going to be where you find simulation data. It's going to be where you're building out lineups. It's going to be where you find your optimals. Speaking of optimals, I'll talk about those here in a second. But this is going to be kind of like home base, right? So the thing that we start out with here, you'll notice in comparison to last year that these are now individual tabs and that we have the select view up here and we have the select site up here. So you're going to start with selecting your view and selecting your site. If you're on FanDuel, obviously it's going to be, FanDuel oriented things. If you're on DraftKings, it's going to be DraftKings oriented things. The view is going to give you two different views of stats. So in the simple view, it starts out on simple, mostly because this is optimized for mobile. So if you were to look at this on mobile, you would see that it was nice and clean and you'd be able to see all of the columns, right? If we go to advanced, what we end up seeing now is going to be a much more detailed version of the range of outcomes, right? So now we get the finish rates, we get the percentile rates, we get the salary thresholds, and then we get the different versions of ownership. Obviously, ownership is not updated yet, but we'll end up getting different versions of ownership here as well. Small field or regular, small field, large field, and cash game ownership. For the purpose of doing your research, you're going to be using the advanced view a lot more than the simple view. But if you are on mobile and you just wanted to see, who has the best projection, who has the best top 5 finish rate, and who has the best value, this is what you'd be looking at, right? You'll also have some export buttons here. So speaking of the portfolio manager, if you want to export the range of outcomes, the player range of outcomes for the portfolio manager, just be loaded straight up, then you can just hit that. And then it's going to give you a pre-formatted download of the range of outcomes. If you want the full range of outcomes, say that you're on advanced and you want the full one, then you hit that. And now we have the full download, right? Some other things here. So you're also going to have plenty of info and filters. So last year, we had a difference between regular and showdown range of outcomes, right? We had different apps built up for each one. This year, they are living in the same app. So if you want to see showdown projections, you just hit showdown, right? And now we're going to be able to see the different showdown stuff, or at least we should. If that's not hooked up yet, then I'll hook it up after today. But when we get to the optimals, you'll see that they live in the same thing. You'll be able to go between regular and showdown. You'll be able to choose different slates, right? We have secondary, we have late slate, we have Thursday through Monday, we have main slate. You'll be able to see what positions, right? We're going to be able to say, all right, just show me, don't show me quarterbacks, just show me all of the positions. Or you can add back in quarterbacks. You'll be able to see different price ranges and views. You'll be able to select specific teams and specific games. Lots of different info and filters here, okay? So this is pretty boilerplate for the different models that I have over at Paydirt. It looks very similar to what you have seen for MLB, just oriented, of course, around NFL. So if we move forward, we're going to go to the stacks. All right, so this is going to show you some information around the different stacks that we have. And again, if you select simple, and it'll be baseline simple, then you're going to see the salary of the stack, the median outcome of the stack, how often we expect them to surpass 60 plus fantasy points, and how often we expect the stack itself to exceed 4x its salary, right? So this, again, 4x here is value. This is just kind of upside, and this is median, right? If we go with advanced, then we see a whole lot of other things, right? How often is this stack, this one of the QB plus the wide receiver 1 or tight end plus wide receiver 2 or tight end, how often is it the top overall scoring stack on the slate? How often is the top 5 and scoring stack on the slate? Top 10. How often does it exceed 60 plus fantasy points? How often does it 2x the salary required? 3x, 4x? What is the expected ownership of that stack? And then finally, some LevX, which is based off of ownership and some upside columns here. You'll also see, this was an addition last year, but you'll also see what the team total is for that stack, right? And that's something that we care about when we're considering upside and considering just kind of heuristics on how we want to look at stacks. Again, you're going to have some info and filters. You're going to be able to see different slates. You're going to be able to see different teams. If there are other filters that you guys would like in this filter dropdown, let me know and we can add that. But this is going to be stuff that you can use to see different slates and different teams. So I'm going to talk about the hand builder. I guess we can talk about it now. So when we go over to the hand builder, this is a new addition, and this comes over from baseball. So for baseball, what I had built out was a hand builder that allows you to kind of build out a hand build lineup and do so with some intuitive functions here in the filters and the options. So just from a baseline, what this is doing is you'll be able to go over here and you'll be able to say, all right, insert Jaden Daniels. And then I also want Ashton Junty, I don't know, Tyreek Hill, and George Kittle, right? I mean, you can add players here. You're going to see that these things get saved up here. You can remove players by clicking on them over here. Or at least you should be able to. Yeah, you should. So I'm going to click here, and then it'll remove them. I'm not sure why it's taking so long right now, but I'll fix this after we get done with this video. Yeah, there you go. So one of the things that you can also do here, though, is when we look at the quick fill options. There you go. When we look at the quick fill options, what we'll be able to do is quick fill in based on a team, an autofill size, and what the autofill options are. Whether you want to do just quarterback, wide receiver, or you want to do running back, wide receiver, tight end, or whether you want to be quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, running back, right? So this is going to allow you to say, and I will also add QB, wide receiver, tight end, so that we have that option as well. But what we're going to be able to do with this is say, okay, I just want a Cincinnati stack. I want QB, wide receiver options, and I want to do a 3-man stack of that, right? So when we hit quick fill here, this is going to automatically fill in the stack for you, which is really, really cool. And it's a nice way to just kind of like start your lineups and say, these are the guys that I want. This is how I want to start my lineup. What is my remaining salary per player left? What is the salary that I have used on this? What is the median? And then you just kind of have like a nice little starting point for your lineups. And then you can go in and you can add in guys, right? There's Bijan Robinson. We can add in, say, let's say that we need some value here, right? We can sort this by 2x rate and say, okay, let's see. I want some value. I'll take Ja'Cory. I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name. Krosky Merritt, sure, whatever. Just JCM. Going to add him in there. Then also going to add in Ricky Pearsall. We're just going to keep adding some value here. And you can just kind of go through this and fill out your lineup, right? I think the quick fill options are really, really cool and are going to make it so this is a really useful tool. You also have other things here like team filters. So when you have team filters, what this is going to do is it's going to parse down this player select based on the filter. So here, obviously, we're only going to see Arizona. If I want Arizona and New York Giants and Denver, I can do that. And then when we untoggle them, then it's going to remove those. And then finally, player filters, you can select different positions that you want to see. Like I just want to see running backs, or I just want to see a salary max of like, $5,000. Like show me all the running backs under $5,000, right? There you go. So pretty cool tool. And then when you're done with it, so let's just finish building out a lineup here. No tight end. We're going to go, sure, 5,000. I guess that's fine. Let's just go ahead and add in Chig here. And then how else do I want to do this? Let's go find a defense. Jets, sure, that gives me 5,900 for utility. Give me a running back or wide receiver for 6K. Yeah, sure, that'll work. So there you go. So now I have $100 left over. I spent 49.9K and I have a projection of 127.55. That's great and all. Another thing that you can do now is save your lineup, right? So when you save your lineup, then now you have a lineup here. And if you want to export your lineups, you can export your hand builds and it will export this lineup for you, right? So pretty cool functionality. Something that I think is going to be a really nice kind of time saver and nice little builder option for people who are wanting to just kind of hand build their lineups out rather than go into an optimizer and look for it, right? Oh, that's why that didn't work. I need to go through, obviously, and clean this up a little bit. It'll be cleaned up in the next day or two. But cool tool. So last thing, let's go over here and go look at the optimals. So the optimals tab is going to be replacing the optimizer. So you'll notice that in the dropdown here for NFL, there is no optimizer, right? We have content simulations, we have the range of outcomes, we have betting models. We do not have an optimizer. That is because I have retooled the optimals to act as an optimizer. So in that thought, let's take a look at them. What you're going to end up getting is the optimals list here, and it's going to default to the kind of options and filters that we have here, right? So I do have a note here. These filters will display various optimals in the table below to pick from. If you want to export the entire set of 10,000 optimals, hit the Prepare Full Data Export button. If you'd like to apply the filters here to the 10,000 optimals before you export, hit the Prepare Full Data Export Filtered button. That should say filtered. I'm very good at my job. What it's going to do initially, right, is how many lineups we want to display. It's going to display 150 lineups where the minimum salary is 49K, the minimum stack used is 1, and the maximum stack used is 5. Right? So that's what we're going to see here initially. And you're going to be able to see a couple different things about this. So you could just go through here, and this functions the same way as an optimizer, right? If you were to go to another site and go to their optimizer and hit optimize, this is basically what you would get back. So what you can do then is look down here and you can see some information about the optimals that are showing. So the minimum salary used for the optimals in the seed frames is $44,400. The average is 48.7 and the max is 50K. So if you were building out a lineup and you weren't using the optimals, you would want to aim for at least 48,000 in salary, right? 48,700. You'd want to aim for a minimum projection of 123. You'd want to aim for a minimum ownership of 60%. The minimum here, I think you can mostly ignore. That just tells you what the outlier lows are. I like using the average if I was going to be hand building off of this information. And then if you go lower, then what you'll see is the frequencies. So in the display frequency, this is going to show you the exposure of each player that exists in your display frame. So remember, this is just 150 lineups. right now on default. So when you go down here and you take a look at this, it tells you who is most used, what their frequency is, and what the percentage of the display optimals is. So Egbuka is the top overall exposure in the top 150 optimals for Paydirt. And then it's James Conner, and then it's Jaden Daniels, and then Christian McCaffrey, so on and so forth, right? If we go over to the seed frame frequency, then this is going to show you who is most used in all of the 10,000 lineups that I have loaded into the app, right? So James Conner is the most used at 37.61%, then McCaffrey, then Egbuka, then Jaden Daniels. You'll see that there is a bit of a difference, right? Egbuka shows up in 54% of the top 150, but in the 10,000 that are loaded in, he's only in 33%. So that can tell you two different things. One, he is more valuable than is being used in the 10,000 lineups, right? He is over that 33%. So in the top 150 lineups, he does show up more, meaning that he is a important piece. He's a core piece of the lineups. It also tells you that if you were building out a portfolio, you would probably want to be closer to the 33% rather than the 54%. At least that's how I interpret it. So now if you go up here and you change some things, I want to talk a little bit about the filters, but if you were to change this to 1,000, right, and hit enter, that is going to reset here, and now you'll see that you have 1,000 lineups here. And when you go down, you're going to see different information in the display frequency, right? So now Egbuka is at 32%, James Conner 32, Jaden Daniels 37. So as you change this display frame, the display frequency will also change. Worth noting. So let's talk a little bit about this stuff. This is all pretty straightforward. Like if you were to change this to say minimum stacks used and go 2, then you're only going to get 2-man stacks or more. Obviously, you could move that up if you wanted to. You can move the maximum stacks down. You can change the minimum salary used. Like if you change this to 45K, then the salary is going to be, at lowest 45,000, right? The big thing is that when you shift this to showdown, you can also grab the showdown optimals from here. So this is going to be where both the regular optimals and the showdown optimals live for main, secondary, and auxiliary. Secondary is considered the early slate for regular, and the late slate is going to be auxiliary, right? Now, the last thing that I think is worth saying here, and it's something that I very recently added to MLB, is this priority variable. So one of the things that I talk about a lot when it comes to optimals and the way that you should play them and the kind of contest that you should play them in is you care more about your projection in large field and you care more about your ownership in small field. And it's a spectrum, right? It's in super large field GPPs, you care a lot more about projections. In 50-50s and head-to-heads, you care basically not at all about projection. You care a lot more about ownership, right? So what I wanted to do was say, okay, people should have the ability to affect the way that optimals are pulled down from the database in that same way. So as you're seeing it now, you can see that this is based on the priority variable here is based on projection, right? Now, watch what happens if I change this to ownership. So now we see that the ownership is way higher and projection doesn't matter. Right now, we are basically downloading the optimals from the database based on the ownership of the lineup. So if you were building for cash games, if you were building for really small field stuff, right, you would want to set your priority variable to ownership rather than projection. Oh, but James, what if I'm building something and I want to build out my MME portfolio and I have a mix of small field and large field? Well, in that case, you can use the mix. So if you use the mix, you're going to be splitting the projection and ownership downloads from the database based on this number, right? So this is a percentage. It's not formatted as a percentage, but it's a percentage, right? So what split of projection ownership do you want to dedicate to projection? So this is predicated on projection here. If you say 50, then 50% of the optimals that you download from the database are going to be projections, and 50% of them are going to be based on ownership. The priority variable is split 50-50. If you change this to 75, right, then you end up getting 75% predicated on projection and 25% predicated on ownership. So you have some control over the way that you would like to manage the optimals that you're getting out of the database. So if I go mix here, right, and now we are seeing a mix 50-50 of your optimals for projections and ownership. If we scroll through these, we will see eventually a breaking point where it starts to go with projections or with ownership rather than projections. Now, it might not show up in the top 150. It might not show up in the top 1,000. But if you're looking at it, you're going to see that there's going to be a breaking point where it drops. The projection drops pretty drastically and it starts caring about ownership. If I were to change this to 1%, right? Now when it reloads, we're going to see that the vast majority of them are going to be based off of ownership, right? So the top, whatever percent of this is going to be projection, and then we're going to see it break. So we can see that it broke right here, right? So the top 100 lineups here are based on projection. And then for the rest of the lineups, it's going to be based off of ownership. So this does not reset the index. They will be concatenated on top of each other. So you'll be able to see where the break is. For me, I think most of the time I'm likely going to have this set to 75% because I care more about projection rather than ownership. But I do want to have some hedge when it comes to building out my portfolios. So this is the new optimals format. It's going to be something that I think is very useful. I'm going to use it a lot. It's going to be what I use to load into the portfolio manager. Speaking of, if you export the data filtered based on these filters, right? We're just going to go down to 1 here, and we'll do a mix of 75%, and we'll all reload. Okay, so if we hit either one of these, right, I'm going to be using this the most. You can export either the IDs for just like the regular optimal set or the portfolio manager optimal set, or you can export the names. I will almost always be exporting the names, and I'm almost always going to be exporting for the portfolio manager because I use it a lot. But if you hit this button, then it is going to give you the lineups based on your filters that you can use and upload wherever you'd like. If you do it based on just the export, then you're also going to get salary, projection, team column, secondary, all the info that you see in this data frame. So that is the range of outcomes. That is the bread and butter. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. Let's now move through the other tools as well. And I might have to do a different video for each one. Maybe I'll do a different video for each one, talking through them. How quickly can I move through these? Finder, stack finder. Okay. I think I'm going to do a different one for each one. So this has been a breakdown for the NFL range of outcomes. This is the tool that we are going to use the vast majority of the time, the tool that is going to be based around content, the tool that is going to be fueling most of our decisions. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out. You can find me obviously in the Discord. If you go to the Paydirt community Discord here, you can just sign up and connect your Discord here. If you have not gotten a subscription over at Paydirt yet, you should absolutely do that. We have monthly, weekly, daily, and yearly options. Best price in the industry, bar none. You're going to be able to get a lot more for your dollar here at Paydirt than anywhere else. So if you have questions, reach out to me, let me know. Otherwise, this has been a walkthrough of the NFL range of outcomes for Paydirt for the 2025 season. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to explain the rest of the stuff going on. Adios.